Condolences as Imo State Governor Senator Hope Uzodinma has described the stampede in Abuja, Anambra and Ibadan as a cruel twist of fate when charitable acts meant to uplift the needy turned into grief. In a testament or statement rather, Governor Uzodinma specifically mourned the death at Holy Trinity Catholic Parish, Maitama, where he is grand patron of St. Vincent de Paul, the organization behind the palliatives. He noted that the victims were fellow parishioners. He also extended his condolences to the people of Okija, Anambra State, who were similarly affected. The governor commiserated with the Catholic Archbishop of Abuja, Most Reverend Ignatius K. Ghana, and pledged that the Imo State government will offer assistance to ensure medical care for the injured. He also urged organizers of such events to implement stricter security measures to prevent future tragedies. Now, Dr. Sam Amadi is set to look at this issue and a different side to the conversation. Dr. Sam Amadi is the director of Abuja School of Social and Political Thought and a Rights Analyst. Thank you for joining us. First, I would like to, this is tragic and is saddening. So at the last count, we heard that 70 lives, and including 40 children. First, I'd like to get your reactions, particularly on the position of the Emergency Management Agency. The nature of managing such a disaster as this, and of course, the way police as well went about it. What are your reactions to this?
I think first, condolences to the families that lost dear ones, and of course to the Minister of FCT, the Governor of Anambra and Oyo State, and of course the Kale community. It's really tragic, but again, maybe from hindsight, most of them are avoidable. And that fits into three things. There have been the issue around growing poverty and desperation. So it didn't lead to the deaths, but the people are more desperate now. People are probably poorer, obviously, very hungry, and you can see that the level of rush by people to just get into any frisbee anywhere, any palliative, anything free. The other issue is also around the cultural component. If people were orderly, basically, in spite of their hunger and desperation, the culture of disorder has caught up with us in a big way. That you see, we saw the picture almost at the same time of a flight. People were boarding flight, maybe much delay, and they are stampeded into the aircraft. So there's a dimension of some kind of social capital that is bad, the way we overreact. And I think also some dimension also of a newfound populism around palliatives, So we now created a culture, a virtue signaling, you just have to do palliative. At local level, politicians, small, big, are doing palliative. Some of them are just cups of rice. And so this notion, the poverty has got to the point where the thinking around palliative has replaced the idea around well-being and welfare. So government failed throughout the year, state government, local governments, and then during the Christmas or Ramadan, palliatives, some kind of token, sometimes degrading token. Look at the pictures of human beings struggling. This is really like a war zone. So let's cut the chase. The notion, the optics of Nigerians carrying, nylon of, wraps of small rice and cake and gleefully, moving, and it's really sad. We didn't have this in the last 8-10 years. It's now a sorry sight. So again, if you look at what's happening in the U.S. with the letters, the bills around, payment, financing government. Some of them are also palliative. They talk about farmers, hurricane, and they're going to transfer through cash. They're going to build into a much more sustainable level of empowerment. So I think we should now asterisk this culture of palliative because it's degrading. I think it speaks of degradation and poverty at a level that not just those who are poor, but we too have become morally poor, that we are now trading on these palliatives. Now back to what could have happened. And I recall that in our own church, the Everlasting Arm Parish of Redeemed Christian Church of God, we've been doing what we call Tabita, which is like for over 10 years, and never had incidents. And the good point is that it's bad to always expose these palliatives to people. So you see a crowd, and they are seeing heap of maybe bags of rice, and you are sharing in that setting where obviously scarcity. They look at it, crowd is more than the number, and so stampede. But what the RCGG Everlasting Arm have done over the years is that from the gate, people are outside. They give the number, you walk in one by one. They have already shared all those. And that reminds me of something I saw in somebody's presentation in the scripture, where Jesus fed 5,000 fish. He said they caused them to sit down in 50s. So that idea of first organizing the people, organizing the materials away from the people, so you don't create a sense of desperation. This is limited supply. And there's some people making mistakes. They start sharing in the crowd, give people discriminately, and people start stampeding. So I think that problem, that lack of processing, of organizing, I say, okay, this is the process. If they do it better, we can have this outcome. And so that goes back to, is there a risk now that warrants regulation? In Nigeria, we don't think strategically, and so people think that every problem requires a regulation, just slam dunk. Okay, no more palliative. The police says something that sounds like you're going to have legal and illegal palliative sharing. So you're going to get some kind of approval. That's not the way to go. And by the way, the police, it seems to me the police doesn't have real legislative power here. The police work is to protect. So it's the FCT minister, the governors. Can they
make suggestions?
Oh yes, what they can do is, based on existing protocol, on NEMA, probably, this is, by the way, NEMA is when there's emergency. So ordinary sharing of palliative should not constitute itself an emergency. They're two different things. The stampede is an emergency that NEMA fits into and did this with. But people sharing palliative should be a normal activity that's within their purview. But this is what's going to happen. So the FCT minister, FCT or FCT, has a legislative competence, the minister himself, through rulemaking, or the legislative council. They can review and create criteria and say, if the number you're going to, is beyond X, you have to trigger this level of protections. For example, in the one I talked about, Everlasting Arm Parish of RCGG, which have the civil defense, the police, they can determine the parameter where this is going to happen, whether it's able to sustain the number. So there are a couple of regulatory procedures we can set in place now for this kind of situation, but those should come through rulemaking process of designated legislative institutions. So I mentioned FCT Council, they have the power. The Minister of FCT has rulemaking power under the Act. The governors, of course, to their various ministries have rulemaking powers, and of course the legislative council. But the bottom line is this: it's not just to act typical Nigerian, fury and fervor. So okay, something has happened, therefore we are going to, strangulate everybody. No, it's to dimension the problem. The problem here is the lack of two things. One is the lack of rigor and due diligence of those who are promoting these interventions. The desperation that we in the land now. So this demand and supply of error mix together and create this crisis.
Right.
So we should first say, for example, reasonable. If this number goes beyond this, this is what should trigger. Not just to say get approval from us. The police have no power to
key issues you've highlighted. Lack of organization on the part of those who intend to bless people during Yuletide season. So there has to be an organization. And the other one you mentioned earlier is about hunger. Talking about hunger, the minister, quite a lot of people have they've spoken to these issues, and they said, look, the government will have to sit down to address the issue affecting people, especially when it comes to the hardship that a lot of people are facing. But the Ministry of Information, of course, the federal government through the Minister of Information and the Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris, they say people should stop politicizing, this conversation, this stampede and all of that. And a question a lot of people are asking is that, do you think this is about politics, or it is about life, or genuine concerns from Nigerians or those critics of the government?
I think it's both. I mean, come on. When the Stampede happened at the National Stadium over Nigeria immigration recruitment under PDP, the APC politicized it. This is politics. It's fair game for opposition to politicize. And what is politicizing is to attribute fault to a government. Now, there are two ways to look at government fault. There's growing poverty and hunger arising, and that's the duplicity when people argue that it's not part of government. It arises from policy of government. I mean, it's a no-brainer. If you have devalued the currency by over 500%, if you have a spike in inflation, even by the conservative estimate of MBS, if you have fuel, so all these headwinds mean that the source of livelihood, income per household has diminished significantly compared with inflation. So people look at the price of rice now, and how many families in Nigeria can buy the traditional bag of rice or even have bags? So that is part of the problem, that people are hungry than they were, more hungry than they were 2-3 years ago. People are starving more than they were 2-3 years ago. Nobody can take that away. That's real. Now, whether that's what caused this crisis, even if they are hungry and there were some basic, good enough protocols for managing this, we may probably have this Stampede. That's one other issue, organizational. The other issue then is how, what I call the romanticization of poverty in Nigeria. This idea of palliatives everywhere, you know, palliative, is a cop-out. You see, we are now trying to say, oh, government has failed. So let's now forget government and solve poverty crisis through this so-called intervention, be a good citizenship, good Samaritan. And that's a problem. It makes government less committed to solving the problem of poverty. And that's why I give an example of the US. Where government itself in the US is also intervening to deal with emergency poverty caused by hurricane or other dislocations. I don't see why we can't do that. And again, is it difficult for government also to have a structure where voluntary contributions can also feed into, you know, people who like to contribute to solving this problem of poverty can donate to a structure where it can be well managed. So what I'm trying to get away from that, we so romanticize poverty and make this palliative part of a permanent feature of addressing what should be a structural problem of poverty and impoverishment arising from policy failures, and arising from the fact that even government budgets are not addressing. For example, look at the whole states and their budgets, and look at the analysis of poverty, multidimensional poverty, and ask yourself, which of these budgets address these issues? So the governments in developed capitalist countries are devoting public revenue to direct attack on poverty. Government of very poor, underdeveloped, with no mitigation factors countries are not directing public resources to address those issues. So I see that the unintended consequence of moving away from holding government accountable and using governance to deal with poverty is that we're going to create this crisis, this chaos of self-help. And then it fits into where palliatives, even at very disgraceful, I've seen some palliatives that are really dehumanizing. But that's the notion. So government is politics and it's fair politics. The fault belongs to government policy that has also created more poverty, and also the Nigerian culture where the poverty plus desperation and from a well-entrenched lack of organization created this very avoidable crisis and debt. So no public official should easily get out of blame to say, oh, the opposition is politicizing. The opposition exists to politicize crisis because they have to attribute fault to government in power, and which is what they did when they were in power.
A good place to leave it. As always, thank you for coming on Newsnight. Dr. Sam Amadi, Director, Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Thank you for coming on the Newsnight.